Today, I really want to share a discussion with you that is not only very inspiring, but also very heartwarming, nourishing for the soul, the heart, and the brain. I want to introduce you to Stephanie Rose. Stephanie Rose is a founder of the newsletter and the website The Firefly Scout. She is also a transformation focused mentor and strategic change guide, and she's helping people to uncover the mysteries that hold them back from living a life they love. Stephanie, through energy management, intuitive insights, and practical tools like the glow map and human design, empowers people to confidently pursue their dreams and create a sustainable, lasting change with a playful and inspiring detective inspired approach. But I don't want to say more, and I'll let you discover my discussion with Stephanie Rose. Right. Thank you. Really, thank you for having accepted because I discovered your newsletter, Firefly Scout. First, the name is very intriguing to me because I knew Firefly in Europe, but I think there's not as many as here in US. And I discovered, and I remember this time when my mom came to visit, and we were seeing in the backyard solely tons of fireflies. And that's the one day in a whole year I've seen them when my mom was with me. And I
Aw,
thought it was such a magical moment.
that totally is. Yeah, and fireflies just are magical. Like
Yeah.
anyway, they add so much spark and hope in an environment that can actually feel dark and scary. So I love that. And then you had someone to share it with.
Yeah. Yeah, that was even making it more special because I don't see my mom that often anymore. She's in France, I'm in US. So yeah, so the name of your newsletter kind of, tilt something. And I was curious because I made my research a little bit about you, and I was curious to know what were you doing before that led you to create a whole Firefly Scout newsletter with a glow map and all the vocabulary you're using is just music to my ears. So,
It's so delightful to hear. In my prior life, I was a program manager for a global furniture manufacturing company.
okay.
So I was helping people do all the things,
Yeah.
but in the world of furniture.
Okay. And so in my understanding, so you started to question about, what your heart really desire. Um, and you were interested to also talk about how learning to know yourself better and knowing what you really wanted to do or knowing your heart desires help you to build stronger relationships or to how it impacted those around you and your relationship overall. So let's start maybe with what was a trigger moment where you thought, oh, that can't go further like that. I need to do something else. I need to create something else. I want to create something else.
It was one of those kind of slowly and then all at once kind of things, like all the dots came together. So it was around the time that my youngest was about one, and you start to get a handle on that two under two
Yeah.
realm, and okay, now we're at two under three. Um, and literally, I started to get more sleep, and I could kind of start to wonder. I had a little bit more capacity to wonder, okay, I've done the things, right? I have the house, job, spouse, kids, great. Oh, like now what? And so that was kind of it wasn't a big question, but it was a quiet question. And so coinciding with actually having more capacity to explore that stuff, that's when I got into a lot of the more self-help things, being curious just about what I was curious about. Who am I now that I'm a parent and I'm someone else's whole world? Well, what's my world? Who am I to lead all of this for
Mm.
my kids? So just started like with following those questions and getting curious and really defining like what do I like? And with the time that I have that is so precious, what do I want to be doing most with it? And that's how I kept like navigating through trying to find my answers and following like one little spark at a time.
I love you say that. Because it's something that my life coach always says all the time. It's she's also using actually that reference to a map and to discover going on an adventure, exploring. And it's a journey I've been doing with her for a while, that we're going piece by piece, discovering something more. So I love that the idea you're giving to make sure it's something you discover, step by step, and not one day suddenly you know very well what you want to do. It's not always happening like that. So I love you're saying that. And so in your journey, where did you start? So you were reading books, you were probably listening different podcasts or something, and what starting point did you have for those for maybe that are listening to us and wonder, yeah, I want to go on that journey too, but well, where do I start?
Yeah, some of the books I was reading then or catching my interest were like Rachel Hollis's book then, like she was hot on the scene. Jen Sincero's, books, like all those things are kind of like really activating and a little bit more like um, woman leadership, but through self-discovery type way. And then I had heard about The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron, and an opportunity came around to do that journey with an accountability group. And that was like the single most thing that made it all come together because its own journey. It kind of has its own like map of sorts, but it's focused on journaling and doing creative artist dates with yourself and like really letting those parts of you start to come alive again. And I'd say that was like the single most aha moment, even though it's a 12-week journey to do, but
Yeah.
just like, oh, like, and getting all of those words out on the page because she uses stream of consciousness journaling, which I had never done before. It was always more like, not quite Dear Diary, but like very detailed, like just more like evidence of like what I did of the day versus like this is where my thoughts are going. This is like blah blah blah. Like I called it like word vomit on the page, and that was what really like freed up my mind to let it really talk to my heart and let that stuff come out.
Yeah, I think journaling, I can't explain why, and I know the same coach was always encouraging us to journal, but it does really do something. I also observed a change in my journaling when I started to be more conscious about certain things, about my thought process, studying positive psychology. Um, Even if I was not describing much, I also observe a very drastic difference between before and after, where sometimes I even wonder, wow, is that me writing that? Where does that come from, you know? Um,
Yeah, like look and be like, what did I just even say? Like I didn't reread it often, but sometimes I'd have to be like, what did just come out? Because I feel amazingly better. I feel like this sense of clarity, even though what I actually wrote
yeah,
wouldn't indicate that, but like I feel it. So it is very powerful.
it is. And so at that time, what did you observe that people around you, were they behaving differently, or maybe you were behaving differently, or even your relationship with your kids, did that change? Were you more patient, or did you see any change already at the beginning, or how long until you saw a change with others?
Well, there were shifts because like part of it is like when you commit to something like that and you're actually doing it is like you have to arrange your time a little bit differently. And then you have to give yourself that permission to show up for yourself, just to be consistent. And even if I didn't get it done every day or the full 3 pages every day, like I still knew I would, like it was still the thing I would do, and I would figure out a way to get it done in some way and in some amount. And so like just that self permission was like I actually noticed it in myself first before maybe other people did. And then I think other people started to notice when they're like, oh, like, how do you have time for that? Oh, how do you like,
Mm.
that's an interesting idea. Like, because I actually had more of a sense of myself that I was then like being able to share and offer the world. That's when more people noticed.
I can easily imagine many people having also family, young children, having to manage a whole, life, job, house, and still keeping a relationship with your husband as a wife, and still having, time for yourself to nurture yourself. And I read one of your article, or maybe it was your newsletter, or both, where you were saying that actually you've been creative and not necessarily blocking one big block of time to make your workout, your walk, or anything you wanted to do, but be more creative on little things you could do throughout the day. So what can you say to those people who could relate? I'm too busy to do anything. I don't have any time. My kids are way too young. I don't have a minute for myself. Yeah, how creative can you be? Like, how did you, in your logistic, how did you do that?
I think a lot of people like try to set goals of like, I'm going to do this for this long. And the only like success looks like that I filled in the blanks consistently, like in that like harder, more rigid way. But if
Mm.
you set the intention of like, I'm going to be more creative, and these are all of the ways I'm going to be creative, I can be, and start understanding you can be creative in all facets of your life, then those opportunities like are all around you. So like you can be creative in how you dress, in maybe like how you like even slice your kids' lunches. Like, do you do something kind of fun with that? Do you put it in a different container? Do you put a note in it? Do you put a drawing? Like, what kind of creativity speaks to you, and how can you express that in all different facets? Like, I would even take like when I was sitting in boring conference calls, well, I can doodle, or I can practice my lettering, or like
Yeah.
there's there are just lots of things you can do in the midst of your very busy life, and just with that different intention. Like it depends on the light that you're shining into it.
And did that change how you were approaching others or how they were, the discussion we were having? Or I can easily imagine after a full day, you're being very drained and tired, so maybe less passion with young kids. Did that change actually when you started to do that work?
uh, what started to like make me feel a little bit more like me, because I actually showed up for myself throughout the day instead of like hoping that the kids went to bed well so that I could maybe have time to work on something before bed when, like, oh, I'm too tired, or oh, like they don't go to sleep or something like that. Like it it made sure it happened like throughout the day versus like just hoping that everything would fall into place so that I could maybe do it in this sliver of time I carved out for myself, at the end of the day.
Yeah, in the end, well, from what I hear, instead of waiting for others to give you the space to be for yourself, then you're taking that space yourself. So you're being more sovereign and taking your power back on what you want to do and who you are.
Yeah, it's like just adding that flavor of you throughout your day
Yeah.
versus like thinking you only can exist in this very like 10-minute window when you allocate it for yourself later. Like, no, like, and it helps you get to know who you really are because you test these things. Like, oh, I thought like I wanted to doodle more. I'm like, actually, I don't want to doodle more. Like, that wasn't the answer to how I wanted to be creative. But it was nice to know that it was something I could do if I in that moment, but then it kind of gave me like a sense of like, well, what do I actually want more and less of in my life? And then go pursue that because I have this evidence to know which direction I want to go in.
Very, very inspiring. I love this flexibility as well. I think a lot of people, and I feel, myself as well, probably too, can be a very high achiever, always, looking for the performance and having this rigid agenda. One of the way to organize can be block of time. So if you say, okay, this block in the morning is for me only, then if one morning you can't do that, what happens? You know?
That
So
like then that you block is like gone for the day. Like, but I still needed that
yeah.
time. Like so yeah, this is like it's so good to do time blocking, but figuring out a way to like some things are meant to be time blocked and other things are meant to be like layered across your life.
Yeah, I think I need to try that for next year. Starting actually now
Yeah.
to do that throughout the day. Um, I read that you're also a projector in a human design.
Oh yeah.
So we're not gonna dive into human design here, and I encourage people to look at the technique of human design. But projector are pretty famous for having fluctuation of energy compared to other profile. I'm projector myself in human design, so I feel it very well since since I start to be aware of my own vitality and energy, where I'm gonna have days where I can be 6 hours straight, and then after 6 hours, I have to sleep for 2 hours. So how did you manage your energy by still showing up for yourself and showing up for others?
Uh, I mean, our world is very much a generator type energy, like go, go, go.
Yeah.
And through this discovery journey, like I didn't know about human design when I started, but I did pick it up a couple years after that, after like the initial aha, and just noticing like, oh yeah, like my energy doesn't work like the rest of the world seems to, and having that confidence to be like, well, I'm gonna try to work more how I work best and experiment with that. And it was interesting to really like play with that and honor like the amount of rest that I needed and when and how I worked. And part of it was like not advertising like, hey, I work differently than you, like this is how I'm doing it.
Yeah.
Um, but just, figuring out my way to get it done without making a big deal out of it was like the way I kind of navigated it.
So, how was it for you to allow yourself to rest when people were still going? Because I can easily guess maybe some days you would need to take a nap in the middle of the day, or you would need to, take a break in the middle of something else. And it's not necessarily something that people do. Usually, people go to work at 8, they work throughout the day, and then they leave at 5, and at 5 eventually they rest for a little bit before going to another activity, a sport, kids, whatever. And I feel when you have that type of vitality and energy template, you need to rest a little bit more often. Not necessarily long, but quite often. So was that easy for you to allow yourself doing that?
Uh, I was very fortunate when in my corporate world I was home officed completely. So I had that structure and ability to like step away from my desk or um, take phone calls like on a walk or something like that. So I could mix things up a bit more. So if someone doesn't have that flexibility, though, I think you just have to learn to discover like what kind of rest you specifically need. And it's not always physical rest. It could be mental, emotional, spiritual, like what can you give yourself in those moments? So for me, sometimes it was like, I just can't be at my desk anymore. It's not that I need to lay down, it's I need a different perspective. Like my energy needed like a refresh. So
Mhm.
that was actually the rest that I needed, was to step away from being so close to things. Like, you get focused on spreadsheets and your to-do list. So for me, the rest was I need to rest from the focus
Yeah.
and step away. Or other times I needed like a spiritual rest and like put on a great song and really like dance around and like get that vitality back going. So I think when people kind of sense that they don't have that energy to like keep going, going, going all the time, there's nothing wrong with laying down and taking a rest if that's what you need, because I've also gone and done that. But sometimes it's just being aware of what kind of rest you really are craving and
Mhm.
give yourself that.
Yeah, that's a very very interesting because I also when I started back in 2020 after a switch of career, I also had to reintroduce nap, during lunch. And I was feeling that for me, the position of laying down was absolute necessity at that time. Now, not necessary anymore, but I observe when, as you say, I need to just change, my focus. So go outside, do something else, not think about anything related to work. Or another thing that I also see that is very different is learning to relax your nervous system and various few activities that I learned when it's very very weird in a way that it's when I'm always keeping focus. No, I can't quit, I need to do that, I need, I'm kind of in this hamster wheel, and the more I'm in this, the more my nervous system need to reset. And I
Yeah.
learned that, and honestly, massage have been for me a tremendous benefit to reset my nervous system.
Yeah. And like if you can't do that, like I learned some too, like where like, if you warm your hands and put them over your eyes
Yeah.
and just like take a breath, like you can feel that like mental tension just kind of like ease out. And
Mm.
like there's other ways you can like massage at your face too. So like that may be the kind of rest that you need. Or knowing like you don't need a full nap. Like, and right before we talked, I laid down for 10 minutes just to like I call it, I need to like pool my energy back together. Like
Yeah.
it's like kind of scattered everywhere, in and out of my body. So it's like I just need to like lay down, and then it's like the act of laying down lets it all kind of like reach an equilibrium
Yeah.
back in my body.
It is. I
And
think
so
the laying position is really, as I like to say, to think that the body knows what laying position means. So even if mentally you're somewhere else, if you lay down, then your body starts to relax, and then your brain at some point catches up normally.
yeah,
Normally.
like so it's not even saying like, oh, I have to have a nap. Like, no, like even like 2 minutes just
Yeah.
laying horizontal or
Yeah.
just changing your body position can
It is.
really help and signify that to your whole nervous system.
So, so at that time, you're back to your path. At that time, you're starting to explore. You're still, trying different things, going through the book of creativity and trying to, implement different things. But you're still working in this corporate job. So, what made you change and create the glow map and the whole newsletter Firefly Scout?
Um, I was actually I started Firefly Scout while I was still working, so it
Okay.
was like just like a dream that I had to follow. Like kind of just felt like the next thing to do. Like I've gone through my own journey and I know what I love from this journey. And I'm like, I want to share this with people. There's got to be people who feel the same kind of lost, burnout, end of the road kind of feeling. And I wasn't finding it in like one resource
Yeah.
for other, like people would touch on like one aspect, but they wouldn't really even acknowledge these other facets. So that's what kind of sparked Firefly Scout. And the initial product was an illumination kit. So like a guided journey, kind of like how the artist's way. would kind of nudge you through a journey of self-discovery.
Mhm.
And in there, I've also discovered human design. So I've started to layer that into it. So, like, your heart inherently knows what you need and it can guide you. And as you're in tune with yourself, you can self identify all of the stuff that human design can tell you. But it's a really useful system to help you, like, give you more waypoints that you might have missed or give you words for something that you didn't know were a thing. And so I love blending the two now, where you build that inherent trust with yourself because your heart always knows the way, but you have this other system that can kind of help you along and kind of give you something to kind of focus your attention on for the next step for you.
Yeah, so more using it as a tool than identifying yourself just from this. I know that that's the skepticism around human design and other tools like Myers-Briggs test and all the different self-knowledge tool where people end up identifying with themselves about this tool. So it's always my point of view is always a little careful when people start to say, oh, I'm doing this because I'm projector or because I'm manifestor or because I'm XYZ according to that tool, rather using it as a step to dig deeper into who you are. So I like your approach about that, and it's I know that you're being very attentive to energy. Also, you were writing different things about how you manage your own energy with the pull and push. I love that article. Can you tell us more about that, maybe? What you mean by pull and push for those who didn't read the article?
Yeah, like you're right. I am very much about like the energy of things. And so one of the things that caught my attention, like I was noticing, is like the relationship with time and the push pull of relationship of people like pushing things into your time and you pulling them in, and how that energy can feel different. It could be the exact same task, but if you're choosing and like pulling it in toward you, you're going to have a whole different attitude toward it versus if someone's pushing it onto you. And so just giving it that kind of name and being able to acknowledge like why you maybe feel resistant about something is like, well, this was all pushed on me. So that's why I feel a little bit resentful about doing it. Once you can like acknowledge those feelings about it, because feelings are energy, then you can start to unpack that and really like let go of some of the resistance that you might feel about doing stuff, and then have some awareness of like, well, what do I actually want to fill my life with? And how can I start pulling that in more proactively instead of being bitter that, well, everything's pushed on me, I don't have time for myself. So
Yeah.
like it's a dynamic that we have to be able to respond because life is always going to push on you. But if you can also have the autonomy and self efficacy that you can pull things in that are meaningful to you, then that's what's going to like really make you glow. You're going to have a lot more energy around you because you don't have this I don't want to say negative energy, but just like a lower resonance of energy of what in everything you do.
And how do you change then if you at some point observe that okay, I feel I'm being more pushy, forcing things to come to me. But I want to change. I want to be more inviting and more letting things come to me. How do you change that?
You have to approach it with like a spirit of curiosity, like, and that's where if you set the intention more of like the general feeling you want to feel as like your goal rather than like a, a smart goal type
Yeah.
situation, then then you're a lot more open to all the things that you could start to draw in. And because you don't, the reason you're not there yet is that you maybe don't know So you can't, it's really challenging to like set a goal for something you've never been before by trying to lay out the steps exactly because you don't know if that's exactly what it's going to lead to. But if you know you have a feeling that you want to get to, a sense that you want to build, and then you start following your intuition about like, well, what feels like that sense that would bring me closer to that sense,
Mhm.
then you can start exploring and playing. And that feels so much more opening and fun than like a to-do list to achieve your goals.
And slowly I'm thinking all my planning for strategic planning for 2025 means nothing anymore.
Oh yeah.
It's yeah, it's really now I'm listening to you and I'm thinking I agree with the SMART goal. I don't like to use SMART goal anymore because I think not only it's adding a lot of pressure, and if you don't reach the SMART goal, where is your success? Um, does that mean that you failed? So
Yeah.
I'm reviewing this. It's something pr work in process right now for me, and it's really a question I have now is that okay, if we don't do goal, if our goals are more like intention about how we want to feel, um, how do we measure success? How do we measure if we're doing good or not? You know, you can't quantify emotions, so I can guess you might say, yeah, you will know how you feel if you feel good about it.
Yeah. Well, like, there is a place for having like a smart type goal, but I I believe they really need to come from the heart. So if you have this feeling you want to get toward, then I like to experiment with like making a list of all the things I think could count toward that and then start doing them. So it's you're still taking action, but it's you're doing it in the spirit of like when I do this, I'm checking in with myself to see if it's getting me closer to this feeling. Is it am I noticing a thread of this feeling as I do it? And if no, then like, okay, well, maybe that wasn't the thing to do. But what did I learn from that? Like, oh, well, this part of it does make me feel more that way. So you start like kind of like changing, making little incremental adjustments to like figure out your way to get there. And that can feel really frustrating to our ego and logical mind who wants to see like, am I like, yes, like I want to know that in 25 steps I will achieve this goal. But there's no promise that that's actually what you want to feel. Like you could get something done, but you may not feel good
Yeah.
about how you got there. So I'm still working this out for myself as well. But as you're working toward a goal, you have to figure out the harmony between like putting in so much effort, even if it's aligned effort, but you hate doing it. Is that what you want? Like, probably not. If you put in so much effort and then it comes at a sacrifice to other things that are important to you in your life, like if it ruins relationships or um, ruins your health or mental well-being because you're so focused, you like well that's probably not how you want to get there either. So like,
Mhm.
how do you find a sustainable way to get there by persistently showing up in an aligned way and you believe that it's making a difference, that you believe it's getting you toward that feeling that you want. And when you put all three of those things together, that's when you'll get there.
That's very precious. I think I'll have to listen that thousands times. Um, yeah, really getting the intention about how you want to feel first, and then putting some actions, and every time checking if the actions align with how you want to feel, and not reversed how it's the societal norm right now to just do an action plan, and there is no room for feelings in that plan. It's just, are the actions going to where we want you to go? And there is end of it.
Yeah, it
So
doesn't factor in that, like, how's that affect the rest of your life, the rest of your well-being. So it's like, I don't know, it's more about the journey than the actual result. And so I think that's what's most important, even if it can be mind-bogglingly frustrating to
yeah,
like parts of you who does want to know, like, if I do this, I will get that. But you do have that assurance that if you do those things, you will get that. It's just not that goal that you thought you were going after.
yeah. And that's no coincidence in the discussions we have, because what you said is just a recurrent topic in my life.
We'll
And
have to keep talking about that.
yeah, enjoying the journey rather than, the end goal is, I actually signed up for drawing classes to learn to detach myself from the goal, because I've never learned to draw. So I must be at some point realistic and having some good sense that I'm not gonna have any goal about drawing. So yeah, that's my strategy to learn to detach myself from the end goal more.
Yeah. Like, what is the end goal? Is that you want to, like, maybe be more in touch with your feelings or have a better sense of expression, not create world-class art,
Yeah,
right? So like that's going to change the whole intention behind what you do and what success really feels like.
yeah,
Because if you judge yourself by what other people think about your art, you can't really control all that, but you can control, like, how good you feel, what emotions came out on the page. Maybe it's not even about the art, it just is something that you had to process internally, and the art was the medium to do it.
yeah. So yeah, being really curious and not judgmental. It's
Yeah.
something also very big in positive psychology to let the judger out, of the room and get more curious about exploration and trying, and that's something, I think the why it's so hard to integrate that. I think it's also because it's definitely not what we learn at school. I don't know if now it's different for your kids, if they changed that, but I know when I was at school, that was not something we were learning. We were not having room for, they were encouraging curiosity in certain classes, like we had art class, music. So in those classes, we were encouraged to try some stuff. But even I can remember even art class, we had instructions to do something. So the only room we had was the interpretation of the instruction, but we were not completely free to explore um, the medium or the paper pens, whatever it was. And music the same thing. Music, we had one thing to play, and everybody was playing the same. Did that change actually now? Do you see a difference with your kids, or how do you approach that for the next generation that can relearn to fully enjoy life by enjoying the process?
Uh, well, we have chosen to do a hybrid homeschool with our kids.
Yeah,
So they go to a instruction 2 days a week, and then the rest is at home. So we've built it into our lives that they have more freedom to express themselves. And yes, they still have to meet testing requirements and they do get grades, but the focus of their time and energy isn't on getting things done, in a classroom setting. It's they
yeah,
get to follow their passions a bit more, um and we're more involved in how they do it. So like we don't make them finish every math problem on the page, and their teacher even says, don't finish everything that's assigned, like do it to your level of comfort that shows they get the concepts.
yeah,
And so we have the flexibility to say, like, hey, like, start with two of these, and then if you and if you get through those, then let's talk through the rest of those. Because if your resistance is the writing it down, like that's boring, then tell me how you solved it. I just want to know that you can. I don't need you to prove it to me by writing it down every single time.
Yeah.
So that's a choice we've made, and it's not always easy. My husband and I have to remind ourselves like raising kids is hard,
Yeah.
but we chose this hard. And even though some days we're like, why do we do this? Like, I also know that making a different choice would just be a different kind of hard. And these are the lessons that we feel are important to for them to experience, and the way we know how to teach them.
Yeah, this idea of choosing your kind of hard. Yeah, it's something I think too. Many people have an idea of their ideal life, and they think, okay, if I do this, then I'll be happy. And once eventually they get there, and they realize I'm not that happy because, well, this is harder than I thought. But maybe choosing different would be also hard, but not the same kind of hard. So I like that. I like that choosing your kind of hard.
Yeah,
So
like they can both be hard, but one won't make you happy, or one will be like less fulfilling to your soul type thing. Like,
yeah,
and if they were kids that like loved and needed rigid structure, then maybe we would maybe make a different choice. But I don't think any of us truly thrive on like rigid structure with no grace in the
yeah,
process. So we're just kind of choosing how we navigate this journey.
yeah. I had no idea you could actually do hybrid, so that's a good thing to, yeah, good thing to know. Yeah.
Yeah, like they exist. I didn't know either, and it was something we kind of heard about. And because they started school when COVID hit, then it was kind of like, I guess they're just like, it's probably what we would have chosen, but we might have checked out a few more things before. We're like, nope, go, just
Yeah.
we have to get this locked in. And it's our fifth year doing it, so it's again, we're choosing our hard, but I feel it's the right choice for us.
Yeah. So going back to your journey, so you start creating a newsletter, you're still working for another company, and what made you choose to stop doing that and to really change your whole lifestyle?
It was something that like was kind of building, like even though I had an amazing job, I had great coworkers, I worked for a very like values aligned company, like in so many ways it was like the perfect job for me, but it still wasn't enough
Mm,
after a while. Like I really appreciated the opportunities it gave me and like the flexibility, like raising kids and everything, but just something started like kind of building of like I dream of something bigger than this. And I had started the business, and it was by no means successful financially to make the move, but there's something in my soul that was just kind of feeling like it was getting sucked away that I was like, I don't know, like something is going to need to change. And so I was coming up on my 15-year anniversary with the company, and something's kind of like something's going to have to change after that point type thing. But I kind of wanted to hit that milestone because I felt like there was like a cycle there to finish. And so like it was something I'd just been holding in my heart. And then we've had like childcare issues throughout the years and frustrations, and my husband travels a bunch for work. And so it was kind of like these other things were building up that was like, well, why don't you just quit? Like so that you can really do this thing, and it would also solve these other problems, and like we'll figure it out. And so it was kind of like, well, I actually kind of had a date in my heart about it. And so that's it aligned. Like I hit that anniversary and I was like, I'm choosing me. So it wasn't the easiest thing. It's still like some people would think like you're crazy giving up this kind of job, like with that kind of flexibility and everything. But my heart said, you gotta go.
Yeah.
And so it was, and I don't regret it. So there's that. But it's just it's a new kind of hard, a new kind of challenge.
Kind of.
Because like
That's gonna be the running guy and you're kind of hard. And that's a great example you're giving because I know that in couple that can be a big challenge when one partner wants to, change job or create another, company, something that will impact the financial situation of the whole family. And sometimes the discussion gets, a little twitchy around that. How did you manage this with your husband and how did you, yeah, I'm not sure really, did that get you closer together or how did you handle the situation overall?
it's still a dynamic we're working with because, and it's not even so much like on the financial front, it's more on the I love what I'm doing
Mm-hmm.
and he doesn't as much. And so I think it's more like the dynamic of those energetics that causes more of the friction than anything about like the finances or anything like that. It's so that is something I wish I knew before I left
Oh,
my job of like the money part would be fine. Like
mm,
we were privileged enough to have some really well-paying jobs beforehand. We live within our means, so like the loss of my income for the time being hasn't been like as noticeable. Um, and the goal is that the business will like recoup all of it, but it's more around like the those other dynamics of the household that
the
we're still like
homeschooling
working
and
through.
you
Yeah,
being
like
involved in, yeah.
yeah, like I get to spend more time with the kids, like even more so now. He travels, so it just becomes even more noticeable that he's gone. Because in my old job, like I traveled too some. So like there were just all these other stresses that we thought like, oh good, we're getting rid of some of these, but we picked up some of these other ones that's the only thing I wish I'd like I
Yeah.
couldn't have fully envisioned it, but I wish I had been a little bit more intentional on like imagining, well, what could that look like when we make this shift?
Do you think that can also be possible that the fact you chose yourself and you're fully aligned in what you do then kind of reflects to him that maybe he doesn't feel as aligned as he wish he would be? Yeah.
Yes. Like
We're
because
all
we
relationships are mirror of each other. It's so,
yeah, like and we all have that. Like there are parts of his life that I'm envious of because like man, I wish I have that. So like
yeah.
there is no like balance in life, but there is harmony. And so sometimes harmony means like that the energy actually isn't technically balanced. The harmony is like, well, you give more in this area and I give more in this area. And somehow like it works out. When things start swirling and getting like big feeling, I'll try to remember like this is like a lava lamp of stuff. Like it's always in flux, it's always moving around, and yet it's kind of mesmerizing and beautiful. So how can I see this as like a, a more beautiful moment or like what is the upside in this? Um, and just know it will change. So like, and sometimes we can be more intentional about what those changes are, and other times just life happens and it changes anyway. So
That's that's very interesting, and I also I agree with the movement, that everything it's always in movement, and it's also a situation I'm experiencing where I'm thinking, okay, I have to think bigger, that things are gonna change at some point. The situation as it is now is not always gonna be the same. And also, yeah, saying that not seeing the couple as there is you and there is me and two different entities, but even two different individuals, but not necessarily separated, but there is a complementary energy coming in. That's something I feel many people forget when they're in a relationship for a while, that they're complement each other on different tasks. Rather see each other very separated and, back to back, rather, side by side. Um,
Yeah. Well, it's like it's all about how you feel about it. Like that's kind of like where that push pull of time energy
yeah,
happened too. It's like feeling like, oh, like, well, you're stressed out, so you're pushing things onto me to do because that's your way of handling what's going on. And then I feel it's like you're just pushing stuff onto me. And then I'm like, ah, like, I'm not going to do the thing because I'm responding to your energy. And then being able to take a breath and have some perspective and be like, oh, like, that's probably why you're doing this. So how can I approach it with that like a different kind of energy that like this is something you actually need and this is where you're expressing your need. So how else can I support what you truly need and not be mad or frustrated that this is the one way it's expressing itself, but how can I actually like support it in a more wholehearted way?
yeah, and before we end the episode, there is something I know you're communicating a lot about self-conscious, self-awareness, and learning to know yourself. I know it's something that I'm also going through with my clients, and to me, it's the cornerstone of everything else. Um, did you observe a change in the person you were attracting into your life when you started to, know your own values, be very clear on your boundaries, your needs, learning to understand your emotions? Did you observe a difference?
Yeah, like because like once you're aware about that with yourself, then you become aware of like how you spend your energy. And so if there are friendships or relationships with people that like aren't quite vibing with you, sometimes it's not even a conscious like, oh, I'm cutting them out or I'm not spending my time there. It's more like I'm following my heart, I'm following my interest.
Mm,
And then your energy naturally starts to go that way and then things do fall off. So I haven't had an experience where I had like cut someone out, let's say, but I do know like through this experience, I have brought more people into my life that are kind of like on a similar journey and have like really enforced the mindset that I have for myself and they like complement it.
yeah, very, very inspirational. Um, to end the episode, I usually have a few questions that I like to ask. The first one is, what is the biggest mindset shift you've experienced?
I would say is fully believing that like everything is possible. If if I have it in my heart, it's there for a reason and then it's possible, but the timeline may not be what I think it is.
Very true. Everything resonates so much. The other one is there something that you would have considered as a failure, that brought you actually growth and learning?
Yeah, I'd say like if anyone were to like look at my business from like the business side of it, like on an Excel sheet, they would be like, how is this sustainable? Why are you still doing this? Like this makes zero sense to keep doing.
Mm,
But I see it as like these are deposits that I'm making and it is it is going somewhere, and just holding that trust that it is all worth it because I can't not do it.
Yeah.
So, like, even if it doesn't make sense on paper to someone else, I know that it's a success. And success doesn't mean, that I'm like wealthy and in that way, but
Mm.
I am wealthy in spirit and in doing what I love and just truly living a life that I love. So that is a huge success to me. And other people may not see it that way.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, that's a great answer. Thank you for sharing that. And the last question I have is if you had one advice to share with people listening to us, what would it be? Something like you think would be absolutely necessary today?
Um, your heart always knows. So, in whatever way works for you, like listen to what your heart is telling you.
That's a great conclusion. Thank you so much for sharing that. I appreciate everything you shared. That's very inspirational, but very precious. And I know I will listen to that a few times.
Now
It's
I'm so delighted we got to like meet
yeah,
and chat.